My buddy John Pudner is joining me now. He is with Take Back Our Republic, takebackaction.org. John, it's always great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I asked you on to help break down the numbers because I know you're like me, you're a numbers guy, and we can look at some of these polls, but you moved to Wisconsin specifically to help out in some campaigns there, and that's a state that's beginning to look like there's some momentum behind Republicans and Donald Trump. Is Wisconsin now a swing state? Could it flip red again?
Yeah, it can. And the other thing that's happened is in this, some of the states have both a Senate race and the presidentials in doubt. And Wisconsin kind of seemed to have the dark horse as far as the senator, Eric Hovde, and he's now actually popped slightly ahead in a couple of polls. So now you've got, both the U.S. senator and Trump that could win, and that would be kind of the big surprise of the night. In Wisconsin, almost be like we were waiting on Ohio 20 years ago, but
right.
Now maybe waiting on Wisconsin.
I think we'll be waiting on Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I think that's going to be the county that's the key this year.
True.
So Brett Favre, did he help make a difference in Wisconsin amongst Green Bay fans?
He did. It was a pretty rousing ovation for him. I was there last night. That was quite a nice event. And then President Trump got there a little late because he had a second job of driving a garbage truck. So he had to do some pickups in Green Bay, and still got there just about on time though. So we'll give him credit for that.
That was absolutely brilliant to turn Joe Biden's comments calling his supporters garbage into a positive, just another image I don't think any of us had on our 2024 bingo card this year.
Yeah, and I think Trump understands marketing. I'm starting to get a feel for that after whatever it's been now, several decades.
He certainly knows how to seize and capture free media. And I was kind of talking about this at the beginning of the show. There are images, there are pictures that will be iconic. As you look back on this campaign in the history books decades from now, the four pictures I think so many people will remember, and I had forgotten about the fourth one. I think the picture of Donald Trump standing up after his ear had been grazed by a bullet when an assassin tried to take him out with his ear bleeding on stage with his fist pumped in the air. That's going to be an image of him with an apron serving fries out of a drive-through window. Now in a safety vest driving a garbage truck. And somebody reminded me of his booking photo when they took him into jail. Those are going to be the four images of Donald Trump that live on in history.
That's a great point. When you first said it, I did the same thing. I said, wait, which is the fourth? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. When you got to it, of course. Those will be the four. You're right.
We're talking to John Pudner, takebackaction.org. So look at the numbers for me and tell me what you're seeing in some of these polls that are coming out showing a definite momentum swing in Donald Trump's favor and Republicans' favor.
Definitely. And the first thing, just being an older guy who's watched this for years, it's amazing. I mean, in today's world, like a steady 2-point swing is a huge swing. I just have to laugh thinking back to we went from Mike Dukakis being 20 points up, sitting in a tank and being 10 points down. I mean, now it's like a disastrous Biden debate, and Trump goes from, even to 2 or 3 points up. It's just like people are so locked in. You're fighting for so few, but yeah, definite momentum. I just don't see how he loses Georgia, Arizona, or North Carolina. I mean, some people look at polls say, well, there have been a couple of North Carolina polls. It's really hard to poll after a hurricane. I mean, right. That always happens. There was a CNN poll. I can't remember if it's DeSantis or Scott with them down 11 points after a hurricane. They won. So I just don't see those three. So I really think the map, I just keep looking. He's got to just get one of the three Midwesterns on top of that. It's got to be either here or Michigan or Pennsylvania. And if Trump gets one of those three, he wins. I think he could take them all and Nevada, but he's got to get one. If she sweeps the three, then she wins. That's the bottom line.
It's interesting because right now, especially with the polling, if you look at the electoral math, Donald Trump has more paths to an electoral victory than she does. She's got to sweep the blue wall to win the electoral college. Donald Trump only needs to flip one more state back to what he had in 2016 to be able to win. So he's got his odds are much better. But as we look at polling, and, in my job, when I'm not playing a disc jockey in the afternoon, I'm also running a bunch of radio stations, and we do a ton of research and sampling, and our ratings and our music research is all based on call-out research. And it's so hard today to get an accurate sample, to get people to answer the phone, to get those phone numbers to to even call and then get somebody on the phone for 15 minutes to answer a few questions and fill out a survey. It's just more difficult to do that kind of research now. That's problem number one. Problem number two is historically Donald Trump has been underweighted by the pollsters. We saw this in 2016. We saw it in 2020. And now at these numbers, the only concern I have is maybe that the pollsters have adjusted their algorithms and methodology so much that maybe they're potentially overweighting Donald Trump in some of these states.
Yeah. Could be, but it's amazing how they really didn't fix it between 2016 and 2020. I mean, I was more thinking that in 2020, and they really didn't. I mean, even though the final result wasn't what he wanted, I mean, he was down 8 in Wisconsin in his final polls, and it came down to 20,000 votes, and that was the most extreme. So yeah, they don't seem to have gotten it right. Polls, they're within a couple points, but as you said, in a race like this, a couple of points can shift the outcome. I really do think the early vote is a better indicator. It's not that you can do an exact equation on it, but the shifts have been so dramatic through the 7 states on how many more Republicans are voting early than did last time versus Democrats. Those trends, and the left tries to say, well, they're just cannibalizing, they're voting early instead of election day.
That's a valid concern, I wonder.
Yeah, it is, except you can't lose a vote that way. That's what I try to tell people. So worst case then is you come out exactly even. They all would vote election day. But even diehard voters, 20% of them miss every election day, just something comes up. So if nothing else, for every 10 who vote early and their vote is there, it's banked, let's say 8 of them would have voted election day. You're up 2 votes. So you're up something. But it's more just a trend. I mean, here in Wisconsin, the Democrats were outvoting Republicans early pretty substantially. It's 50-33 Republican right now. I mean, even Pennsylvania, a state where Philadelphia is such a machine, Democrats are 29% ahead, basically, on early vote. They were 50 ahead in 2020. It's just the trend. It's not an exact formula. And if you have found a way to motivate your people, whether logistically or because they're fired up to vote early, then logically you're going to have the same kind of advantage on election day. And that's why I really feel confident in this one. And it's almost, I think it's going to be a landslide of 1, 2, and 3% wins, but I think it could be an electoral landslide. I think 312 is very reasonable.
I think the popular vote, obviously, and the individual state votes are going to be very close. But if Donald Trump takes all these states that are a toss-up right now, it will be an electoral landslide. And I'm looking at the latest battleground states right now. Arizona, Real Clear Politics average has Trump +1. Trump +2.4 in Arizona, +0.9 in Nevada. Harris +0.2 in Wisconsin, +0.5 in Michigan. Trump +0.6 in Pennsylvania, +1.4 in North Carolina, and +2.6 in Georgia. I mean, he takes those states that he's ahead in, at least in these polls, he wins easily.
Yes, and the other thing is, in every state, the last month has moved toward Trump, as you alluded to at the beginning. And I just usually find that continues. If you've got a month of steady movement, and I'm talking point and a half, Wisconsin, 2 points really, if it's all moving your direction, that often takes off that last few days. It's really hard to poll this final weekend. I wish like today was the last day of polls. I think it gets very inaccurate the final weekend. But if you have a trend now, I just don't see how she turns it.
John Pudner, TakeBackAction.org here on the Scott Sand Show. How much are you looking at the betting markets now compared to the polls? Places like Polymarket and Kalshi and Robinhood now.
I do look at them, certainly an indicator. The upside to them is a lot of people have a lot of different kinds of knowledge, and you research enough to want to put your money where your mouth is. So that's the upside. But we have seen things distort them. For example, I was really very pessimistic on Wisconsin governor 2 years ago, even though I was helping him. I just said, gosh, I think after Dobbs, I think we did almost a perfect storm to win this. And the betting markets went radically in his favor. Why? Because he really dominated the one debate the two had. And so the one time people tuned in, they said, oh my gosh, he's a much better candidate. But all the other dynamics were against us. And so I kept saying, look, best case, we win by 1 if everything's perfect. And the betting markets went heavy our way. So I have seen when something distorts it like that, still a good sign. Hey, I'd rather have a 60-40 like Trump has now than be the other way around. So, yeah, just one other ingredient.
I looked at the betting markets a lot early on, and I still watch them daily, but I'm concerned in those numbers that there's so much passion amongst the Trump base that they are distorting the betting markets. They're distorting online polls. I mean, we kind of saw that with people using their money to support Donald Trump in the way DWAC, the SPAC spot was catapulted, and then Trump Media, when that went public, catapulted before the shares just completely cratered. I mean, a lot of people lost money on that. A lot of people may have made money, but we saw that in the stock market and the reaction to DWAC and Trump Media.
Yes. No, that is true, but that's why I get back to the early vote. I mean, those are actual ballots going in boxes. You can't fake that. And, we keep seeing how some of the, the aggressive transgender stuff has turned off black males, for example. And then you see, the black early vote lower than it was in North Carolina last time. I mean, for me, that's actual votes coming in. Like, there's not enthusiasm. So I agree completely, and that's why I lean more toward the early vote. I just think it's the one thing that's real. I mean, I don't care how enthusiastic, someone is about Trump. They count as one person when they take that ballot in. Hopefully we're making sure of that everywhere.
Right.
But to me, that's real.
And you look at the momentum, you also look at the loss of momentum for Kamala Harris, even though it's not like Donald Trump is picking up a point every day in the battleground states. But Kamala Harris is dropping by fractions of a percentage every day as well, further separating her from Donald Trump, at least in those RCP battleground states.
Yeah, agreed. Actually, I know we shouldn't comment much on memes, but I thought one of the funniest ones was had Biden whispering in her ear the other day, "Hey, during your speech on unity, I called half the country garbage." I mean, just wish it could be a fly on the wall for the reaction to things like that.
Right.
And I just think the ads are better on the right this time. And every times I've said the other, sometimes liberals are very creative, but I just think they're on message on the right. And I've watched kind of some of the LGBT response commercials to the ones hitting, with Charlemagne the God and on. I mean, they're just bad ads. I mean, they're appealing to a very narrow group of people, kind of saying they're picking on us, we're going to get them back. But I'm seeing them on TV, so their targeting's not that good.
Yeah,
so their
only effective message, I believe, so far has been on abortion. That's the only winning argument that they've been able to make.
Yeah, absolutely. A quarter of in some polls, if you ask this way, a quarter of the country still says they're voting purely on abortion, and that's the pro-choice side. It's not our pro-life side that I'm on. It's that is her one issue, but she, her other issue was supposed to be protecting democracy. We've had a couple of polls where that's a 50-50. And I just say, look, if you're going to try to throw your opponent in prison for a couple of years, it's kind of hard to keep making the argument you're the one defending democracy. I just think they've blown what seemed like an easy issue just because January 6th has visuals they can use. I'm just talking superficial. I mean, that was a slam dunk for them in 2022. It kind of stopped working against Youngkin in 23. And, 21 it stopped. 22 it was working, but then, here we are again. I don't know. They blew their second issue, I think.
John Pudner, takebackaction.org. Thank you for helping break it down and tell us all what we should be looking for in the last few days before the election.
Sure will. I just think those trends are in place. Unless someone tells me, oh, my gosh, the Democrats had some crazy turnout machine that just started happening this weekend, and they now have 1 million early votes going in. I mean, it would take something like that for me to feel like this wasn't heading toward a very good night. I mean, Senate and I think even House now. That was the last one I saw it on, but I do think Republicans going to have control and have a couple of seat edge in the Senate, and I think Trump's going to go over 300 this time. And I am not normally an optimist. People who work with me on campaigns always call me the wet blanket in the room. I think this is a 300 night for us.
Takebackaction.org. Thanks, John.
Thank you.